All right. Am I on mute? Yeah. We start with who we have. Shouldn't be long. First of all, thank you so much. Ryan Stewart is joining us today. I'm going to go over some year-over-year numbers real quick, and then Ryan will go, and not much else. I forgot that I double booked. Annie Murphy from HMS was supposed to be here today, but I forgot about that. So she'll probably join us next week from HMS, or Cinch as they call it now. Also want to give a shout out, not to embarrass her, but you'll see a name on there. I know I saw it somewhere. Rebecca Maggard. Rebecca is finishing up her classes. She lives here in Old Town, and she's joining the office. So welcome aboard, Rebecca. So she's there somewhere.
Hey, Rebecca.
All right.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Mark. Thanks.
All right. Let's go. Was there anything I wanted to say before we go to the slides? Probably was, but I forgot. So let's go to the slides. All right. I don't know what. Should have had a happy new year. Oh, happy and healthy new year to everybody. Listen, 2020, I've said it many times in recent weeks and months, crazy year, unbelievable, once in a lifetime things that went on with the pandemic. Looks like we'll be still working through that over the next, months to come as we hope the vaccines get out there and things get better. I've said many times, and I'll say it one more time, that for most of us, we've been very fortunate. Not only did it not affect the real estate market, the year was unbelievable, driven by various things, including interest rates. So we have a lot to be thankful for. I think I've said that in our office, I think the last number I checked, 63% of our agents had a year-over-year better than the year before. On that, I know even in our office, a lot of our agents, not a lot, but quite a bit of them, had to struggle with children and who's going to watch them and staying home during the pandemic. So for some of those, it was more of a struggle. And just to keep in mind, again, for a very large part of this country, it was a very bad year. A lot of people not being able to work and a lot of issues going on, not to mention the amount of people that have passed away during the pandemic. So we want to keep all that in mind as we speak about the good things that happened to us or our office. We do not want to forget those things. So everybody should keep that in mind. All right, next slide. So as I said, Ryan is here and we'll be speaking briefly. So the birthday slides, Jeremy Stewart, who I believe is on the beach in Florida where they aren't concerned about COVID. It's his birthday, January 5th. Elena Maddie's birthday is January 7th. I think there's a few more birthdays. Next slide. No, you're going the wrong direction, Jacinta. Oh, that was only two. I could swear there was 4 birthdays. All right, I'll assume I'm wrong, but I could swear I saw 4 birthdays there. All right, open house. Again, New Year's weekend, but it is picking up again. 21 opens, 111 guests. So thank you for those who are still to do them. And just as a point to remind you of, you never know where your leads are going to come from. And what we do know though is if you're not out there and if you're home or doing something, there's no way it's going to happen. Might not happen doing something, but the only way you have an opportunity for it to happen is if you're doing something. Jen Collins, who I don't know if is on the call or not, but Jen Collins was doing an open house at her property, and you'll have to forgive me, I forget the community. Shoot, I can't think of the community. Townhouse community, I believe. She's doing an open house, and as she's sitting there, a guy comes in, and he is the brother of a unit owner in the community whose brother, unfortunately, is very ill and will not be coming back to the unit, and it's become the burden of the brother what to do with it. And he walks into Jen's open house, which she just got done having it updated through a contractor and having it staged by her. That's one of the things Jen does. And the guy was so impressed with what he saw and what he heard that Jen's now in the process of not only possibly listing it, but because of this unit being a disaster as far as work needs to be done, putting together a deal with her contractor to buy cash prior to going on the market, and then possibly listing them when it's redone. So think about that. She does an open house. She's about to possibly sell a $400,000 condo for cash, get paid commission on that, let her contractor redo it, put it back on the market for whatever price it's going to be, list it, and possibly sell it again. So we're not talking about thousands, we're talking about tens of thousands. That only happens because she's sitting there doing an open house. Even though it's her listing, if somebody else was doing an open house, that would have been their lead. So going into I just want to always remind you, it's a numbers game, getting through the no's, get to the yeses. If your goal is to make 100 grand or whatever it is, and you need 10, 12 deals to get there, the only way you're going to get there is getting in front of a certain amount of people. And this is one of the ways. Okay, so that's just another example of an opportunity that wouldn't have happened if she's not there. So I think Jen just joined us, so she missed that whole conversation, but that's okay. All right, next slide. The last week, 9 sales, volume of 5,400,000, 4 listings taken. We continue in all under one roof to be strong. MBH got 3 out of the 4. My guess is the 4th, if MBH didn't get it, must have been a cash deal. Otherwise, they get them all. Weichert Financial coming off a just unbelievable year. Not just in new business, but refinance. I can't tell you looking back, and I know there's agents on here. I know over the weekend, I got an email from Bev, and I think one from Barbara, about deals that Richard and Fred have been involved in. Just how many deals during this year they either saved because of issues with other companies, specifically credit unions, deals they put together that couldn't have been put together. So really hats off to them, and all the under one roof. And our relationship with MBH and just the amount of deals that were put through there, and the amount of things that Ryan and his team themselves, which of course gladly, it's business, so they're gladly, but the amount of work to get these deals done in parking lots, through glass, special exception. I mean, just a crazy year, and truly appreciate, and Lalani, of the job they did to make our deals, make sure they go through smooth throughout the year. And again, it is business to them, so of course it is, but just keeping it all together under the circumstances, just amazing job, and we thank all of them for doing that. All right, next slide. We'll send these out, the absorption rates. Go ahead. Next slide. All right, just to share with you some of the numbers real quick. 2020, all right, the numbers. And again, for us, a COVID year and a lot of challenges and a lot of things, we cautiously kept the office open every day. The lights were on. In the beginning, a lot of places, there's still offices closed up. Tried to do social distancing, but I just always felt that it was important for me to be here, to show you many days by myself, many days by 3 or 4 troopers that are here every day. I just thought it was important to be here for during that period. So 2020, the numbers, let's go for the next slide. So listings, we took 315 listings this year, which was, now remember, listings were at a shortage. But even then, we were 21% over listings year over year. That's a gigantic number, 21%. We took 21% more listings year over year with a total of 315 listings. Next slide. Revenue units. We did just under 600 revenue units, which was 13% year over year. Again, all big numbers, all just an amazing year. And I thank you all for that. Next slide. Sales volume. I hope I got the zeros right. But if I didn't, that number is $378 million in sales volume this year. All right. Gigantic number, unbelievable. We're going to come up against a very interesting number based on what we all know the market's like and escalations and all this. We're going to get to the average sales price, which is the only number that was really down this year, which is amazing based on that. But there's a good reason for it. Our units are up, whatever it was, 13, 14%. And a lot of those units are where we've spread out and are doing more business, thanks to a lot of you. parts of Maryland, parts of Virginia further out, and those average sales prices are clearly lower, which has brought our average sales price down. But even with that, our sales volume still exceeded last year's sales volume by quite a bit. I'm not talking about like 1 or 2, 3, like I think it was like 57 million in sales volume more. All right, next slide. This is a gigantic slide for us. Of those listings, 51 of them we sold in-house, okay? Based on the conversations, based on what you guys are doing to share the information with others, to help each other do it in-house, things coming on, things you know about. That's 16% year over year, all right? So that's a really big number for the office and for us. I mean, obviously it helps the office, but obviously it also helps your fellow agents, those who are sharing that information ahead of time. They'll say, look, I have this coming, I have that coming, helping each other out, trying to do that. So thank you very much for that. And that's up 16% as well. Next slide. Open houses. We did 1,195 open houses for a 31% year-over-year increase. Now, let me give you some information on that just to be in all, candor and open. 2 things about it. So when I first came back before COVID in December, the open house numbers, now this office was always one of the best, not only in the region, in the company in open houses. That number slid horribly in past years for whatever reason, okay? So one of my goals when I came back was to get this number back in order. We were moving in the right direction well ahead of COVID, and I thank you all for that. It was really great. Then COVID came. So just to be honest, this number has in it the number that when we started doing virtual open houses, okay? So it's hard for me to judge 100%, is the 31%, we were well into 20% year over year in January, in February, in March, in our regular open houses, more than 20%. We were killing the year before numbers. So it's hard for me to say, but I want to just be honest about it. This 31% includes that period of time. We stopped counting virtuals now, where we don't do it anymore for the last 60, 90 days or whatever it is. But this included those numbers. So it's hard for me to tell. Open house guests, 15,700, which was a 21%, I missed a percentage sign there, year over year increase. Again, a gigantic number. And if I would go back and take the time now to convert 15,007 into what we believe a conversion rate should be and turn that into dollars and turn that into profit, you would see what gigantic that is. And just remember, for most of us who are, our number one goal is to what? Find clients, right? That's the number one thing, get clients, right? So 15,700 opportunities to find clients this last year. What you did, how you followed up, and what you did to do with those becomes, a question you and your business plan have to figure out. If you did as an agent 20 open houses and you saw 200 or 300 of these 15,700, and if 2 or 3 of those didn't become part of your deals, you have to ask yourself why, and it's a discussion that we should have. All right, not to linger on that. Next slide. This is the average sales price, down 6%. That's hard to accept knowing what we all went through, where every house was multiple offers, but I attribute that to not a bad thing, but a relatively good thing. Our units are way up. We have agents, like I said, doing things in places we really didn't have much power before. All parts of Maryland, and shout out to those agents. We have many agents now who hold their Maryland license, are doing a lot of business all over Maryland. I appreciate it. It's a great thing. Going further out in Loudoun, many more deals this year in Eastern Loudoun, in parts of Fairfax that go in that direction. Clearly, those prices are low. Now, just remember, at 607,000, we're probably 200,000 above the company average because we do business all over, obviously, Front Royal, Fredericksburg. So it's not a bad average sales price for any office. Alexandria is just used to being in the upper 6s, lower 7s. And that's the reason, but again, I think for me, it's a good read. It'd be one thing if we did the same amount of units last year or less, and we're at that average sales price. but we're 13% up in units. And I believe part of that is where we're doing business. So again, that's the average sales price. Next slide. Look, that's an amazing number. It's one of the top three in the, not the region, the whole company. When I took back Alexandria, that number was 1.3%, okay? I don't necessarily blame Will or anything like that. We just took a different direction with it. We just narrowed it down to a few people who we believe so counted on this business to be part of their business and are willing to do the follow-up and what it takes. And all I can say is, look, the number is the proof that that works. I mean, you go from 1 point something. We're looking in the company for a 5% conversion rate. We were at 9.1% at the end of December. So it means something, you know. Hope to add more people this year, but it has to be such a commitment in the follow-up and what you do with these things to be part of that going in the future. So shout out to those who are part of that, and thank you so much for making us one of the best in the company in conversion. Again, I really appreciate that. All right, I think next slide is Ryan. Let me see. So next slide is Ryan, and we're excited. And again, I've already said how thankful we are for the year Ryan had to put in. And I know I spoke to Ryan. I was calling Ryan on Saturdays and Sundays with issues, and he wasn't at home on his deck. He was in the office a lot of those Saturdays and Sundays. So it's been a grind for most. Listen, a happy grind, a lot of money, a lot of business. So no one's complaining, but nevertheless, a grind. And for a lot of my agents, you did better than last year, but even then, virtual stuff, just a grind to get it done, but you did it. So anyhow, here's Ryan.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate the kind words for sure. Certainly, we would all agree 2020 was a year unlike any others, and certainly felt that way around the holidays. But certainly the Stewart family, while not a typical Christmas, counted our blessings. So we're thankful to have you all in our lives. We're thankful to have the continued support, and we just absolutely love our partnership with Weichert. Look forward to an even stronger and better and certainly healthier year worldwide in 2021. With that in mind, want to jump right into the course material here today. You know, I'm going on 21 years with MBH, and I think I've sat and chatted with you all every month during that tenure. So when you've done 240 plus sales meetings, it's always nice for NVAR to give you a steady diet of content, and I don't have to harken back to stuff that we've taught in the past or try to find a new niche to carve out for a discussion. And so every 6 months we see these changes with the NVAR standard forms, and I think every 6 months we sort of collectively hold our breaths. While it's always improvement and insulating you all from liability, whenever NVAR changes the framework for something, it always throws us for a loop. And so I think we're always happy when we see that not much has changed. And certainly that's the case with these new changes effective 1 January. We see changes in the new home construction contract. We see changes in the listing agreement, and we see changes in the FHA, VA, USDA appraisal contingencies, which are incorporated into the financing addenda for each of those types of loans. So Jacinta, if you want to go ahead and queue up that handout, we can kind of walk everybody through the changes. Yeah, so I've started with new home construction. A couple of years ago, NVAR thankfully started work on a new home construction contract. The idea being that its constituents, you all as realtors in the Northern Virginia area, were oftentimes faced with the conundrum of having a client who had real property to sell, but also wanted to provide a new home on that property. And so they put pen to paper and they created this new home construction contract. Hope everybody can hear me. I see Michelle, maybe you can put that on mute for me. With that in mind, this new home construction contract, we talked about it a couple of years when it came about, had a number of nebulous areas, a number of oversights and everything else. And so I really heavily cautioned you in using that form. Specifically, it was a niche document that was only applicable as well when your seller owned the land, your seller was the builder, but your seller had not yet started any construction on the property. Any other scenario in which construction had already started, this was not a good document to use. And so NVAR completely threw out, they got rid of that new home construction contract. And what it has been replaced with is a new home sales addendum. This addendum is a supplement to the residential sales contract, and it redacts a few provisions of the residential sales contract and incorporates a host of new ones. And on the upside, this new addendum is applicable in the scenario that I discussed before, where there's no construction yet, it's been done on the property, but it also contemplates that construction has already begun. And so really this contract would be applicable for any situation, any scenario in which the builder seller had yet to get an occupancy permit. Now, this is not a document that you want to use if you've just got someone who's flipping a home and replacing, some fixtures and some finishes and everything else, but it will be applicable for something that is a new build or a really wholesale renovation or build out, and so forth. Some of the key distinctions that we have for those of you familiar with that new home construction contract, project completion. The old version just simply said, we're going to shoot for this date. But if it's not done within 2 years from the date of ratification, only at that point may a buyer have the option to void. And certainly 2 years is an incredibly long window of time, and that tended to bind up potential buyers within that window. It was sort of reason number one not to use the document. The new version contemplates that we may already be well into construction, and so it defaults to 2 years, or you're able to check a box in which construction will be completed. The buyer can void if it's not done within a defined window of time, a certain number of days following ratification. In terms of settlement obligations, when closing was going to take place, the old version had conflicting provisions relating to certificates of occupancy versus inspection of the property versus settlement date, and it really wasn't clear when the parties had to close. The new framework is very straightforward. The seller gets the certificate of occupancy, the seller gives notice of completion to the buyer, and then at some point within 15 days of the delivery of that notice to the buyer that construction is complete and the CO has been issued, the parties can mutually agreed upon settlement date, but no later than 15 days. So defining that window of time for the parties. We talk about change orders. Both contracts, both the old contract and the new addendum, have the same language in terms of a seller needing to make changes. To the extent there's differences in design or materials or finish, that so long as it's substantially similar, that the seller has that opportunity, the builder has that opportunity to make those adjustments. That's where the old version left off. The new one recognizes that, of course, buyers are going to also want to have change orders done on the property. And so it creates a framework for a buyer to request that changes to be done, seller not withholding consent unreasonably, defines what portion of the deposit will be put down for the cost of those change orders, and then defines an actual change order fee so that we've got agreement up front between builder and buyer. If you want to change, this is what it's going to cost you. Jacinta, if you want to go ahead and move forward there. Right on. Final inspection. Strangely enough, and we talked about this a couple of years ago, the old version of the new home sales contract, or construction contract, gave the buyer a very narrow window of time following completion to vocalize their opportunity to do a final inspection, sort of assuming that some buyers might not wish to do a final inspection of the completed home. Clearly that was an oversight, and so now it's an automatic right to do that final inspection. There is a time frame that it be done within 5 days of notification of completion from the seller. And then the last oversight on the old version was the punch list items, that a buyer could go in, do their inspection, notify the seller of repair requests of punch list style items, but it gave the seller the ability to sort of unilaterally deny a repair or remedy for those inspection items. Really strange language that was in the old version. The new one does what we would hope that it would do. It's just simply defer to the sales contract. The buyer gives the punch list, if there are items covered under the sales contract, then time is of the essence. The seller must remedy those items on the buyer's behalf. Number 4 is probably the most important point of this, and it was the point I made 2 years ago when they created this. Just simply having this contract template is not the be-all, end-all. It's not the panacea that we would hope it to be. I get calls from agents very regularly who are either listing or selling this type of a property, and they want me to write the sales contract. And I point out to them, if they've written on new construction before, they note that the sales contract is 100 pages long. And the difficulty is not in crafting the contractual agreement between the buyer and the builder. The difficulty is in defining what the finished product is going to look like. And so this sales contract is a perfect template to address the contractual issues. In terms of the final product, obviously the devil's in the details, and going through all of the options, all of the specs, the drawings, the plans, the finishes, that build out is really where you're going to need to drill down and find commonality between buyers and sellers. And so oftentimes that's of course why builders already have a contract in place. And if they don't, why counsel is sought to draft that final agreement between the parties. Go ahead and Jacinta, move on, and we'll touch upon the listing agreement and the appraisal contingency, the other two notable changes with the NVAR standard forms. Absolutely nothing is different about the rights and obligations in the listing agreement. And that's consistent across the board. I've given you all the forms. That's for unimproved land, it's lease, it's exclusive right to sell, exclusive agency. None of those forms have changed substantively. The differences that are the changes that have been made are for clarity and for risk aversity for you all as agents. And the first one relates to coming soon. We've seen coming soon addressed for quite a while in the listing agreement, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of all of the issues with coming soon. But we know that when we've listed the property in MLS and we list it as coming soon, that it can be listed as coming soon for no longer than 21 days from the date that it's entered when it converts to active. That was the old language and it left off there. There is a carve out in the MLS and the Bright regulations. A longer period is permitted when when the property does not have an occupancy permit. So we're talking new construction, substantial renovation, condo development and so forth, in which case the default is that it can be listed as coming soon for a period of up to 2 years. But again, keep in mind, that's not our typical residential resale where 21 days is the limitation. So NVAR has simply added that language, that little carve out into paragraph 10 of the listing agreement. The other explanation or build out is in the paragraph 19, the property condition paragraph. I think it's important for you all just to simply take a step back and realize what your agency obligation is. We've talked about it many times as a listing agent. You've got an obligation to disclose to all prospective purchasers material adverse facts pertaining to the physical condition of the property. Now, what this paragraph makes it clear is that the source of that information is irrelevant. You could be down in the basement standing in a foot full of water, just the same as the seller could tell you, don't tell anybody, but the property flooded last week, right? You could get a survey that shows a significant encroachment, just the same. You could get a contract that voided because of home inspection. And so you're vested with all the information in the home inspection report. The source of that information is irrelevant. To the extent that you as a listing agent know of a material adverse fact concerning the physical condition of the property, you have to disclose it to prospective buyers. This paragraph also builds it out to make clear that you as a buyer or as a listing agent have no liability for disclosing those facts. And further, even if the seller misrepresents, if you pass along that misrepresentation without willful knowledge that it's false, you as the agent are not going to have any liability for that. So just risk aversity, just protecting you as the constituent base for NVAR. I'll ask Jacinta if you'll jump to the appraisal contingency.
Ryan,
we saw it.
Right,
I can hear you, Mark.
Yeah, go back one slide, Jacinta. I didn't realize I was on mute. If you could do me a favor, no, the slide he was just talking. Yeah, there it is. So there's at least a half a dozen, maybe 9 new or newer agents on this. So I know a lot of people already know. If you could just, in your opinion, to explain to them what material adverse facts covers, kind of.
Sure. Well, as a threshold matter, I teach a 1-hour class on this. So this discussion will be dramatically pared down. We could teach a full sales meeting on this and would certainly be happy to do it. But when we talk about material adverse facts, I always start with the call that I get probably every other day from a realtor. And they say, Ryan, I'm the listing agent. Do I need to disclose this to prospective buyers? And I say, first off, does it relate to the physical condition of the property? Oh, yeah. We have this problem. Well, is it material? Well, I don't know. That's where the argument is. And my question to them is, do you want to disclose it to prospective buyers? And they say no. And I say, why? It's because they'll freak out. There's your answer. It's now material. It's now adverse, right? The fact that you're calling me because you don't want to disclose it, you've answered your question. So the materiality element, just look yourself in the mirror and ask whether you as a buyer would want to know it. Physical condition of the property really includes just about everything within the four corners of the property. There are carve-outs. Virginia doesn't recognize stigmatized properties. There are certain things for fair housing that you can't possibly disclose. AIDS and HIV was one of those for, or it still is, but it was kind of a hot button for a lengthy period of time. Ghosts, obviously, that's not physical condition. When you get outside the four corners, though, when you're talking about neighboring parcels, right? The neighbors have parties all weekend, or they breed aggressive dogs. When you talk about land use, they're going to extend the street and put a 4-lane highway right in front. Again, that's not concerning the physical condition of the property. And so that kind of thing, you don't have to disclose. But within the four corners, it's a disclosure obligation. Something that happened in the past, but has since been completely repaired, it's a question of, is it likely to happen again? So if it flooded yesterday, we fixed it, but it might still flood tomorrow, we have to disclose that. If it flooded yesterday, we fixed it and put in a French drain and a sump pump, well, now we don't have to disclose because we've remedied not only the effect, but also the cause of that material adverse condition. So I'm always happy to discuss each of these specifically with you, but typical things like, the flooded basement, the leaky roof, the cracked foundation, those are all you need to disclose, and you need to do so in writing conspicuously to prospective purchasers prior to ratification of the contract.
Ryan, I got
Yes.
a question. What if it was broken into, a break into the property?
Unless the break-in created a broken door and the door hasn't been fixed, that would be physical condition. But
Right.
the propensity for theft, again, doesn't have any concern. And we would probably want to err on the side of caution anyway, because now we're talking about, is this a good neighborhood or a bad neighborhood and so forth. That's for the buyer's agent to direct their clients to look up things like schools and neighborhoods and Megan's Law and everything else. But you don't have to disclose that as a listing agent.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. All right. Good enough, Mark?
Yeah, excellent. I just want to touch
Okay.
base.
Great. Yeah, if y'all have questions on those, again, these are situation specific. Don't hesitate to just pick up the phone and give me a call, and we can talk about your particular issue within the context of your listing. If you want to go on to the appraisal contingency, as I was saying, in July of 2020, the framework for the conventional financing appraisal, or conventional appraisal contingency was augmented. Before we had this back and forth, I would notify you that the property didn't appraise, that I wasn't going to proceed forth at the sales price, but would do so at the appraised value. And we go back and forth for 3 days and 3 days and 3 days and so forth until we come to an agreement. And in theory, that could go on in perpetuity up until settlement. That was scrapped. And what was created was a structure that parallels the home inspection contingency, right? I, as a buyer, get notification of a low appraisal. I'm not willing to proceed forth at the sales price. I give the seller notice, and now we enter the negotiation period. And that's a window of time that we define in our contract where we can offer and counteroffer as many times as we'd like to find some commonality. To the extent we find that commonality, we just draft an addendum. The sales price is amended to X. If no agreement is reached during the negotiation period, then we default to the buyer's election period. A window of time, again, defined in the contract, a couple of days for the buyer to simply give notice voiding the contract or to take the property at the sales price. July of 2020, that was only for conventional. That has now been updated. So that framework now exists. The same framework from home inspection exists for the conventional appraisal, FHA, VA, and USDA. So we have complete parallelism between the appraisal contingencies. The one outlier has, and always will be, under FHA, VA, and USDA, the buyer, pursuant to statutory law, always retains the ability to simply void the contract. It didn't appraise. I'm giving you notice that I'm going to void. You don't have that luxury with conventional. You have to at least give a stab at coming up with an amended sales price, even if the buyer is only willing to go to the appraised value. The seller does have the opportunity under conventional to reduce that. And so we saw that addition added to the appraisal contingency notice, Form K-1349. That was a new document drafted in July of 20 to address all the possible notices that a buyer would give a seller following a low appraisal. And now that too has been expanded to include a fifth option, that states only for FHA, VA, USDA, the purchaser is just simply voiding because the property did not appraise. All right, guys, those are the changes. They're great changes. They're improvements. They create parallelism. They protect you all. So again, nothing that is going to change your life whatsoever.
Hey,
Mark,
Rob, it's Mark. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you.
I'm not even sure it's a gray area. And theoretically, a buyer contractually or statutorily cannot waive their right to void they cannot waive their right to be able to avoid it on the VA, FHA, that whole thing, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, this was, pardon the pun there, I almost said this was epidemic in a pandemic. This was epidemic during 2020 because we saw such competition for the lower price brackets properties, many of which were buyers that were getting FHA, VA. And in an attempt to finally get their 10th contract through, they were looking to waive appraisal. And you're just not permitted to do so. So buyers, selling agents, if you want to put language in your contract that you're waiving the appraisal, have at it. But if you're on the listing side, if you're the seller, you should make sure that your clients are aware that it's unenforceable, that a buyer who is getting FHA, VA always has the right to simply void pursuant to that appraisal contingency. Now, what a buyer could do is say, I'm going in conventional, I'll waive appraisal. But the reality with that is you're gonna have to, if you know you're going FHA, VA, number one, it's an ethical concern. Number two, you're effectively waiving your financing contingency in the first place. And as a tertiary effect, in order to even get to the settlement table, the lender is going to require that the amendatory language be signed and incorporated into the contract. And so you're gonna have that hurdle with the seller down the road. It's a bad way to go. So you just have to deal with it. You've got an appraisal contingency for FHA and VA.
Okay, and to be clear, why I bring that up, guys, is because during this last year, many of us did that. We had our sellers waive it, and like everything in real estate, 98% of the time, nobody questioned it. It went through, nobody cared. But in the event that one day a shrewder buyer will, after everything comes through and they waived it, and then it comes in low, they say, yeah, I'm not going through with it. You couldn't stop it. They have the right to void it based on the appraisal. So it's just for you to be aware of it. Like I said, in real estate, nothing's a problem until it's a problem. And we've done deals all year long where people waived it. But just so you know, in theory, not in theory, actually, contractually, they can't. They could actually, after they sign an addendum saying we're going to waive it, don't worry about it, they could at the end of the day say, yeah, I'm voiding it on the appraisal. So just keep it in mind.
Yeah, we would parallel this to waiving your right to receive HOA or condo docs, or waiving your right to cancel under Condo Act or POA Act. Same thing. You can't contract around Virginia or federal law, and that waiving that appraisal for FHA, VA, USDA is exactly that. All right. Guys, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it. Again, from a settlement perspective, we're still encouraging only those who are signing documents to attend closing, just for everybody's safety. That being said, our door is always open for you. If you feel you want to be at closing, if you feel it's necessary for your clients to be at closing, we would encourage you to join. Obviously, all of the typical qualifiers, wear a mask, don't come if you're unhealthy, all that stuff apply. But we hope to see you many times in 2021, and just thank you for everything.
All right. Any last minute questions for Ryan before he signs off?
Happy New Year.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
All right, and to the next slide, I think it's Rich or Fred. Who's on? Rich, Fred?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead, it's you.
Hi, guys. Happy New Year. Thanks, Ryan, for everything. Wonderful job. To you, Leilani, Mark, thank you so much for a wonderful year. To start out the new year, the market, what's concerned? Biggest concern is definitely the elections in Georgia right now, the number of COVID cases, the rollout of the vaccines, whether the extra $2,000 in stimulus checks will happen, and the jobs. So are we going to increase jobs? Are we going to decrease jobs? Is the jobless rate going to increase or decrease? Those are all the things the market's worried about this week. So a lot of that will a lot of that risk will be out of the market very soon. So we should see some flow one way or the other as far as the stock and bond market. Right now, bonds are expensive, which means the price is high and the yield is low. So excellent for mortgage rates. Rates are bouncing off the bottom. The Fed is doing an incredible job of keeping things stable. The bond market can go south really quick, which means rates go up really fast. And they've been kind of threading that needle of buying US Treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities in volumes and amounts that keep it almost like it's not even moving. So we'll get to the next slide and go through that next if we can. I'm sorry, one more. Kind of went through that one. And then, so here we are, record lows were 2.66. It's bouncing on 2.67 with just about 1 point of fees in there on the Freddie Mac average. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, same pricing, but Freddie Mac does a little better job of showing exactly what the points paid are. So that's why we always use this graph. And the 15-year with just under a point, all the way down to the low twos. So simply amazing as far as rates go. And really more amazing is how they've the Fed has kept them so near that low. So they'll hit that low, and then as they rise up, you'll see them slightly come back into the market and repurchase, almost making it impossible for risk arbitrage, other players in the market to take advantage by betting one way or the other, and then causing havoc with the real estate market. So kudos to them. Next slide here. We wanted to get back a little bit to basics beginning of the year. Talk a little bit about ratios. I get a lot of questions recently about what's involved in the ratios. What's a debt ratio? It's basically, your debt's divided by your gross monthly income. So what are those debts though? So the biggest debt is going to be the new mortgage. So your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And then you'll add your monthly debts that are listed on the credit report. So the things like utilities, gym memberships, health insurance, that kind of stuff is not listed on your credit report, not considered a monthly payment to us to be added to the debts, and thus the debt ratio. So just everything that comes up on that credit report, the only thing in addition to that that's not reported that we do count are alimony, child support, separation maintenance, that kind of stuff. That is added to the debt ratio. Also, in these times, the one thing that we look at are the student loan payments that they are automatically deferred now. So even if you didn't want to defer your student loan payment, it will show up on your credit report as a zero payment. You could have, we had someone yesterday had $450,000 of student loans. They're not paying them, they're deferred, but they will be paying them as soon as this deferment period ends. So they were all put in automatic deferment, which it causes, great concern when you're talking to Rocket Mortgage or to NFCU, where that information gets looked at by the underwriter right before closing. So, you don't want to hear that there's all of a sudden a $5,000 student loan payment that's required to be counted by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac that wasn't during the initial process, because that initial process was mostly automated. So debts feed in from the credit report directly to the automated underwriting system, and that's how those companies run and approve folks with the proper debt ratios. Well, that debt ratio shoots up, and it's kind of an automatic now. Whenever we're getting a loan that's been denied from another lender, it's the same thing each time. It seems like it's like, oh, their debt ratios rose at the last minute. Well, it didn't really rise at the last minute. It was there from the beginning. You could have seen that, but the underwriter, who is the brains in those operations, is now just looking at it and realizing and adding those payments in. So we have several different ways to add student loan payments. Basically, the most common is to just take 1% of the amount as a monthly payment. You can also get exception for 0.5% as a monthly payment in certain programs. So and VA, FHA, USDA, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac all have different ways to calculate, but they're somewhat similar, although some are positive, some are negative. So if you have a lender that will only deal with Freddie Mac, like Wells Fargo actually only deals with Freddie Mac. So Freddie Mac's required to take a certain percentage, whereas if we switch it to Fannie Mae for their automated underwriting system, then all of a sudden they're approved. So if you hear things like that, like their debt ratios have risen, ask questions, call me, we can go through it, and maybe we can help make that closing happen like we have several times last year. Next slide. So here's an example of debt ratios. The standard now, I mean, you guys might have heard, from the olden days, 28, 33. We've all heard that. That means 28% on the front ratio, which is just your housing, and then 33 being with all your other debts. Well, after the mortgage crisis, before the mortgage crisis, those ratios went, sky high, to sometimes over what you're making, which didn't make sense. That was the stated income programs. Now, after the mortgage crisis, Dodd-Frank came out with qualified mortgages, and the max ratio was 43%. Now, since then, as always in our business, we get exceptions for this, exceptions for that. Ratios have elevated. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac easily to 50%. So conventional loan, you're blowing through that 43%. You're getting to 50%. The automated underwriting systems will take some negative effects for poor credit, maxed out credit cards, things like that, and it's possible you could get a negative result under 50%, but pretty rare. And then all the way up to 55% with other programs, FHA, VA, any of the government insured, which is a little bit safer to the lender because the government is the one paying the mortgage insurance if something were to fail. So those ratios going to 55%. And then with VA and FHA, honestly, you can, with positive credit, you can get approvals all the way up to 65%, never over 65%. But those are kind of the things we're going through right now to get people's ratios up and approved, even though they've been denied by another lender or something like that. So on to the next slide. Really proud of our customer service this last year. There couldn't have been an event besides the mortgage crisis that challenged our customer service, and we came through with flying colors. What surprised Fred and I was it wasn't only us, but it was actually the entire company, which is amazing. So all the way through the footprint, we got 99% of always at 99, 98, 100%. All the months last year. So best year ever and the busiest time ever for our customer service ratings. Couple quotes of the week in the next slide. For me, we were the glue that held together for Leora, the transaction. And for Joe Fixmer, Fran, that's you, I think. Go-to lender and advisor. A lot of the people we've been really happy to, are moving up. So 2, 3, 4th time buying a new house or refinancing. Super fun because now all that trust issues are out the window. When you're dealing with your finances, you have trust issues no matter what. And when it's the 2nd, 3rd time you're working with folks, it's just been fantastic because it's all just a fun experience rather than worrisome. Next slide is the trivia question of the week. According to CoreLogic, homeowners with financing increased their equity to 10.8% in the third quarter of 2020. How much equity did the average homeowner gain? Anyone with an answer there? How much equity did the average homeowner? Remember, we're talking about the whole country here, and we talked about averages. Pilar, I would have guessed B as well, but that was wrong. Not C either, Michael. Yay, hey Pilar, right back to D. Yeah, $17,000 the average homeowner gained in the third quarter of 2020. It's just amazing. So lots of home equity, lots of refinancing to a lower rate, lots of money coming in your pocket, people who are not getting that increased unemployment because they're not unemployed, or increased checks going out because they make too much. Well, they're getting a huge economic stimulus. That's why Christmas was booming in the retail market, because they're paying less, $200, $300, $400, $500 less a month in their mortgage, and they feel comfortable because their home equity is increased, and of course probably their 401k. So it's the what they call the K recovery, but it is continuing that way. Any questions for me? Just let us know. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for all the support this past year.
Thanks, Richard. Fred. Hey, guys, by the way, to this last slide with the 17th, this goes back to what we've been saying all year. For those of you whose clients were scared to pull the trigger or get caught up in bidding, we've been saying all year long, if they don't pay that number now, they'll be paying a bigger number the next house comes on the market. And this is just another proof of that, how much it jumped in one quarter. So somebody who didn't pull the trigger is absolutely paying more for that same house now than if they would have pulled the trigger, got caught up in the bidding and all the things then. I know it's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, but I guess it's our job to try to convince them or show them the facts that you know, it would be smart to pull the trigger at the time. All right, I guess next slide. Thanks, Rich. Next slide. So I think we have a couple, but if we didn't get yours and you want to talk about it after we do the first couple, just let us know. But let me see. The first one is Leslie. You on? She was on. Leslie, you there? Just in case she's still not there. Oh, I think she had an 11 o'clock call, but we might be running late. She has a new listing on Mount Eagle, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,300 square feet, plus the enclosed tile balcony, dramatic views, including all the sunsets, new renovated flooring and things throughout. 434 going on this Sunday. I think she's also, I thought she was looking for somebody to do an open house, but we can confirm that. If you have any questions, just reach out to Leslie. Next slide. Oh, I guess is this the same one? This is that open house I think we were talking about. So if you're interested in doing an open, again, Sunday 1 through 4, just reach out to Leslie. And, you know, I gave you the example early in the meeting about Jen and what happened to her open house with the guy next door. So you never know where the lead's going to come from. But I know if you're not doing one of these things, there's no chance you get the lead. All right. Is there any more slides? Just no. Okay. So before we go off, is anybody else anything else they need to talk about that they have coming? They need listings, anything like that? You can go out of the slides. Just sit there. All right. Anything else? Anything I missed? Anything anybody wants to bring up, talk about, chat? No? All good? All right. In that case, again, happy and healthy New Year. Thank you for all you did to make the year great. And look, everything I research, everything I read and study right now, we don't see 2021 letting that up at this point. So just again, take advantage of the market we're in now. You know, you never know when these things could change based on multiple different events, interest rates, world crisis, who knows? But I would just take advantage of it now and keep moving forward. All right. Thank you, everyone.